At a bookstore in Vancouver, an American tourist loudly explained that paper books were outdated and only older generations still used them. A Canadian cashier scanned his items and said, "Interesting. We keep them around for people who prefer depth over speed." She smiled and added, "They tend to finish more than headlines." The receipt printed quietly. He didn't say much after that.
At a cafe in Toronto, an American freelancer bragged about working 80-hour weeks, saying, "That's what success actually takes." A Canadian sitting nearby looked up and replied, "That's impressive. We usually try to build lives we don't need to escape from." He went back to his laptop. No one compared schedules after that. During a train ride to Montreal, an American passenger complained loudly that everything in Canada felt too slow. A Canadian across the aisle nodded and said, "Yeah, we design things so people can keep up with their lives, not race past them." He adjusted his headphones and added softly, "Speed is great, unless you don't know where you're going." The rest of the ride was quiet.
At a gym in Calgary, an American visitor mocked the lighter weights someone was using, joking, "That won't do much." The Canadian smiled and replied, "True, I focus more on consistency than showing progress to strangers." He finished his set and added, "It tends to last longer." The American suddenly got very focused on his own workout.
At a university seminar in Ottawa, an American student dominated the discussion, cutting others off mid-sentence. When he finally paused, a Canadian student said, "You've shared a lot of strong opinions." He smiled politely. "I'm curious what they sound like after listening to someone else." The professor nodded. The conversation changed pace immediately. At a restaurant in New York, an American joked that Canadians were too nice to succeed in business. A Canadian entrepreneur replied, "Maybe we just try not to lose clients faster than we gain them." He took a sip of water. Kindness scales better than damage control. The table went still. At a co-working space in Berlin, an American explained loudly how his country led innovation worldwide. A Canadian designer asked, "How often do you collaborate internationally?" "Not much," he admitted. The Canadian nodded. "That makes leadership feel bigger than it is." He offered him coffee. The lecture ended there. At a ski resort in Whistler, an American tourist complained that Canadians over-prepare for weather. A local replied, "Yeah, we plan for problems so they don't become stories later." He clipped into his skis and added, "Preparation is less exciting than recovery." The American checked the forecast again. At a dinner in London, an American guest said, "You Canadians avoid confrontation too much." A Canadian woman smiled and said, "We don't avoid it, we just don't perform it." She passed the salt. It tends to solve more and impress less. No one raised their voice after that. At an airport lounge, an American complained that Canadian airports felt too quiet and boring. A Canadian traveler replied, "That's fair. We try to keep stress optional." He glanced around and added, "Some places treat chaos like personality." The boarding call came. Conversation didn't continue. At a startup pitch event, an American founder dismissed smaller markets as not worth the effort. A Canadian founder said, "Interesting. We usually build for smaller markets first." He smiled. "It forces us to be good, not just big." Investors started asking him questions instead. At a park in Seattle, an American parent said Canadians were overprotective. A Canadian parent replied, "Maybe, we just like our kids to grow up without unnecessary fear." He watched his child play and added, "Confidence builds better in safe spaces." The conversation softened immediately. At a hotel in Chicago, an American guest snapped at staff,
saying service should be faster. The Canadian receptionist nodded and said, "Of course, we just try to keep it respectful at the same time." She handed the key. Efficiency works best when people still feel human. The guest lowered his tone after that.
At a photography exhibit, an American said modern art was just overthinking simple things. A Canadian artist replied, "That's possible." He paused. Sometimes simple things just haven't been understood yet. He walked away before the argument could begin. At a ferry in Vancouver, an American complained that Canada played it too safe. A Canadian replied, "Yeah, we try to make sure everyone arrives." He looked out at the water. Risk is exciting until it becomes someone else's problem. The wind carried the silence the rest of the way. Respect isn't demanded, it's understood.